Okay, good evening, everybody. Um, we are in a new location tonight. Figured it's nice weather, sit outside, and better spots for the Wi-Fi. If there's an issue, or you think it's a better location or not a good location, if there's traffic or other outdoor noises that you don't like, please put in the comments. We'll try to be back next week indoors. Okay, so this week's Parsha is Parsha Shalach. At least it is in the diaspora. In the land of Israel, since they only had one day of the holiday of Shavuot, they read on the second, and in the diaspora, we read on the second day of the holiday, we read the Torah portion for the holiday of Shavuot. For the second day of Shavuot, they read the regular Torah portion, so we're a week behind them. We're going to catch up soon, don't worry. Okay, so in this week's Torah portion is Parsha Shalach, and it talks about the spies that Moses sent to stake out the land of Israel. So when the spies are given the mission, we'll read a little bit what Moses' mission that he gave them. And he says he chose men, and he says, this is what you're going to do. Go see the character of the land and its inhabitants. What kind of land is it? Is it good or bad? Are its cities fortified or not? Is the land bountiful or barren? Does it have trees? Be brave and take fruit from the land. Okay, so that was the mission that they had, was to see what's the situation, what is going on in the land of Israel, and what they're going to have to do. So when it comes to the Medrash explains, why did he need to know, right? What kind of land is it? He said it's simple. He says, let's see how we're going to attack the inhabitants of the land. He says, right, because if they live in unfortified cities, they are strong, and we can rely on, and then they are strong. I'm sorry, and they're relying on their own strength. If they live in fortified cities, then that must be they're cowardly. So the Torah, that was the mission, right? So what happens? They go on the mission. They go for a few weeks. It takes them 40 days for this mission, and they go and they see giants. They see all kinds of wonderful things about the land. They get the giant, bountiful fruits. It was so large that it took two of them carried an entire cluster of grapes. So obviously, it was tremendous bounty in the land of Israel. And they come back on the 9th of Av, and the only deviation from this mission was that Kalev, he was the appointee from the tribe of Judah, and he goes to Hebron. He goes to Hebron, and he goes to pray at the graves of our forefathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because he saw that something was up. Something was up with everybody else, and he wanted to be protected from the agenda of this other spies. Yehoshua, who was also one of the spies, he had been blessed by Moses before the mission, right? So he was given an extra letter. His name was Hosea, and instead he was given the name Yehoshua, which means that God should save you from. Moses was implying from the agenda of the other spies. So they come back, and they start to give an explanation, and they give a report to the people, and they say, "Look, we have these giant fruits. They live in big fortified cities, and they right. So obviously that means they're very well protected. They're very strong, and it's going to be difficult." And but they're not really saying anything too out of character yet, right? So right away, Kalev and Yehoshua, specifically Kalev, quiets everybody down, and he says, "We can go and conquer the land. We could do it." That's his reaction. And then, but the spies, they started saying, "No, it's a land that consumes its inhabitants." Right? And they says they were giants there, and we felt like grasshoppers in their eyes. So what does it mean that the land consumed their inhabitants? Because God made a miracle. He wanted that the spies should be unnoticed. So God made a lot of people pass away, important people, pass away in the land of Canaan. So they were busy with their funeral processions, and they didn't notice these Jews running around checking out what's going on. So that was a big blessing, but they took it as a bad thing. They say, "Look, everyone's dying here." Then what does it mean that they said that we were felt like grasshoppers because of these giants? So the Medrash tells us, our sages tell us, why do they feel like grasshoppers? Because it says, and because they view themselves in that way, right? They view themselves as grasshoppers. So they also saw, so because it was reflected in the conversations of these giants. They said, "Look at these grasshoppers," because that's how these spies felt about themselves. They weren't confident in the mission that they were given. Now, we're going to contrast this mission, the spy mission, with the spy mission that's given in the Haftorah. In the Haftorah, in the passages of the prophets that we read after the Torah reading, in this week's Torah portion, we read about the spies that Joshua sent. Joshua sent 2 spies to check out Jericho, and to see how they could conquer Jericho. And they go and they stay with this innkeeper. Her name is Rachav, and eventually she helps them escape when they find out that there are spies there. She lived at the border of the city. There was a wall. That wall of the city was attached to her house, and she lets them sneak out. And when they're sneaking out, she tells them to go hide in the mountains because that way they won't find you there. And then go back, wait for 3 days, and go back. So they go back, and she says, "I know that God has given you the land, and that your fear is upon us, and the inhabitants of the land have melted away before you. We heard how God dried up the Red Sea. We heard what He did to the Amorite kings, to Sichon and Og, and we heard and basically, it's all yours. Everybody's afraid. We know what happened." So they come back. They come to Joshua and they say, "What's their reaction?" They say, "God has given us the land." They are afraid. We have all the momentum, as they say. Okay. So if you look at this contrast, it's a very big difference, right? On the one hand, what's the difference in the mission? Both are given a mission of find out how we're going to go about conquering this place. But the reaction of the spies is everything they see, they say as a negative. And versus the spies of Joshua, they say, "Look, it's ready. It's all ours. It's in our hands." So, and obviously, so what's the difference? And what is the lesson to us? So we see that the difference is that the spies in the times of Moses, they misunderstood the mission. They thought that they were given a mission. Should we conquer the land of Israel, essentially, right? And they said, "No. If you're saying, can we conquer the land of Israel? No, we can't do it. It's not possible." And maybe they were right? I mean, there's giants there. There's fortified cities. They're very strong. Whatever, all the different things that they said. The inhabitants are very powerful, and they eat these giant fruits. All these things, but that wasn't their mission. Moses gave them a very specific mission. Their mission was to report back to him how we could conquer the land. God had already told them they're going to conquer the land. They're going to go, and that was the reaction of Kalev, right? Of his reaction was, "Alo na'aleh," that we could surely go to the land of Israel. We could do it. And Rashi says, what does it mean, "Alo na'aleh," that we can go up and conquer the land? That he was saying, even if God told us to put ladders to the heavens, surely we could do it. Look at what we just accomplished. This is about a year and a half away from the giving of the Torah, the Exodus, all the miracles associated with that, right? So Kalev was confident, but the other spies, they misunderstood the mission, and they thought that their mission was to see, should we conquer the land? Is it possible? However, the spies that Joshua sent, they understood the mission. They understood that what God has given us a mission, that means we could do it. God said God doesn't give us missions that we can't do. If God knows everything, God knows our capabilities. He created us. So clearly, the fact that He gave us this mission, it means that we could do it. So now He wants us to do it, right? For whatever reason, God wants us to go and physically conquer land. So we're going to go. And they said, "Okay, God gave it to us. This is the situation." They are afraid. So now, when it comes to our personal our personal missions in life, we have to take this approach. And when we are in a situation in life that we're like, what's our we don't say what is our mission. We don't say, can I do what God wants for me? Right? We know what our mission in life is. Every opportunity that we have, God gave us the Torah. We have 613 commandments. We have to do all those mitzvahs, right? So we know what our mission is. So the question is, can I do it? Of course I could do it. How am I going to do it? That's a whole other question, right? That has to be our approach. Now, obviously, you still have to do the so to speak, the scouting, right? You got to figure it out. How am I going to do it, right? God put that in our hands as well, right? Okay, how am I going to find a situation that I'm going to be able to pray every day? How am I going to find a situation where I could raise my children to be Jewish? How am I going to find a situation that I can keep kosher? How am I going to find a situation where I can keep Shabbat, right? All those different things are important things to do, but we're never supposed to say, well, I can't do it. It's too hard, right? What do you mean? God gave us this commandment, right? They didn't just give it 3,335 years ago. He gave it to you too. You were there. He gives it every day. He gives it to every single Jew. So we have that opportunity. So our job is, we have to understand our job. Our job is to find what is the thing how are we going to do what God wants from us, right? How are we going to do it? Not can we do it? We know we could do it. God gave us that ability by the very fact that he gave us the commandment. Now, practically, it's obviously it's a very difficult thing, right? Sometimes we feel overwhelmed, right? We feel like we feel, and not only that, we go to advice, right? We go to our friends and we say, I don't know if I could do this, right? We go to our mentors, we go to our family, right? And they say, well, I don't know if you could do it, right? And they might all say, no, you can't do it. You can't do it. And here we see that the fact that the spies, which were a group of Jews, right? They were considered leaders of the Jewish people. That's why they were chosen. They weren't chosen for their spycraft. They weren't trained by the CIA or the Mossad, right? They were there because of their piety. And not only that, we know that when any time that you have 10 Jews together, it's a holy thing. It's called a congregation. You could say special prayers, right? So they had 10 people, right? Because there were 12 spies, Joshua and Caleb, right? They refrained. They praised the land. 10 of them said, we can't do it. And they were still wrong, right? And they still misunderstood the mission. So even if we hear from our friends, from our society around us, from our mentors, for whatever reason, they say, you can't do it. We can't listen to them. We can't be affected even by, not just by our own thoughts, but even by what society around us tells us. We can't be affected and say, I don't know if I could do it. You know you could do it because God told you could do it. Now, what's the question you're going to ask your mentors, you're going to ask your family, you're going to ask your friends is, help me do it. Help me get through this. There's a joke about a few people who were traveling in Russia in a wagon, and it's getting cold. So they pull out. Of course, everybody in Russia always has a flask in their pocket. They take it out, they pour it, and everyone's sipping a little bit. And even the wagon driver, he's getting tired and he's getting cold, and he takes a few swigs. And everybody but one guy. And so the everybody starts saying, "You got to turn left. You got to turn left. At the next crossroads, you got to turn left." And the one guy who's sober, right, who didn't drink anything, he's like, I know the way. I read the map before we came. I've done this trip a few times. You got to turn right. I said, what am I going to do? I'm going to listen to the majority, right? They're like, what do you mean? We're all telling you got to go left. What, he's supposed to just go along with them? A bunch of drunks, right? So just because, not to say that that society is a bunch of drunks, maybe it's a conversation for another time, but just because a majority of somebody, a majority of a society tells you to do something doesn't make it right. It's a big challenge, right? It's a big challenge when you have a lot of peer pressure and societal pressures, but that's the reality. That's the truth. Now, one last lesson we can learn from the story of the spies as well is that what was the motivation of the spies, right? We just said that the spies were very great people. They were people who were chosen by Moses himself to lead this mission. They were chosen for their piety, not because they went to the CIA. So what went wrong? And many of our sages tell us that actually the spies had very good intentions. They felt that the generation of the Midbar, they were called the Dor Deah, they were the generation of knowledge, they were learning Torah from Moses himself, and they were studying, they didn't have to worry about making a living, right? They got food from heaven, they had clouds of glory, they didn't have to do laundry, they just walked through the clouds and their clothes got clean, the clothes grew with them like a shell. They had the tabernacle, Moses was giving them new commandments every day, it was exciting. All right, and it was very spiritual. It was extremely spiritual. And what are these commandments that they're learning every day? When you come to the land of Israel, you're going to work the land, and you're going to have to tithe, and you're going to have to bring it some things to the temple, and all the different things that they were told. And the spies said, "We don't want to go into the land. We want to be spiritual. We want to do. We want to be connected to God in a revealed way with eating food from heaven and learning from Moses." But they made the same. It's the same mistake. Same mistake. Their mission was not that God told them, "This is what I want from you. This is the reason I created the world, is to be in the world, to go into the world and affect change within the world, not to be a hermit in an ivory tower or in a desert somewhere, but to bring godliness and goodness into the world, and by working physically, laboring in the realities of society." And that was the mistake that the spies made, is they didn't understand their job. Right? Their mission from God was clear. The mission was, this is what God created you for. He created you in order to go into the land of Israel and to do all the commandments. But they misunderstood the mission, and they thought they could get away with saying, "Well, the land of Israel, we'll get to it another time. We'll get to it in 40 years," right? But the truth is that the real reason why God created every single one of us, He gave us a mission. He knows what's best for us. This is why He created us. So every single one of us has to take that opportunity and say, "I know what my job is. Now, how am I going to do it?" Have a good Shabbos. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.